be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel as written to us by John. It was the evening of the first day of the week, and the doors were locked. And there the disciples were out of fear. And Jesus came, and he stood in their midst. And he said, "Shalom, peace be with you." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side. And the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. And he said it again, "Shalom, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you." And when he had said this, he breathed on them. And he said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. Whose sins you forgive, they are forgiven. And if you don't, they're not." This is good news from the Lord. Well, this is one of those feasts where all three readings deserve immense commentary, exciting commentary. I'll just do a little bit. Let's start with this. That in the mystery of giving, for giving to happen, there have to be two poles. There have to be a giver and a receiver, or the gift is not given. Now, God's problem in all of history has been, how do you give away God? And it seems, although the gift is free and totally available as the breath in front of your mouth, as Jesus shows us here, God's had a hard time giving away God. Most of us aren't interested. We're interested in other things, money and power and success and good looks and politics. And we never get around to the one thing we were created for, it seems. So I know, theological concepts. It's the world I move in, but for most of us it's boring and it doesn't stick. After you leave, you'll forget most of what I say, maybe before you leave, I don't know. But I want to give you something that'll help you remember. And for some reason, when we have graphic or visual images, that helps. Let me start with this one. I don't know if any of you have ever visited England. You don't have to by any means. But if you've ever rode on the subways in London or the big cities, before the doors open and you get out of the subways, they say, "Mind the gap." And when the doors open, it's written in big words in front of every door, "Mind the gap." And it means, of course, there's 3 inches between the end of the subway and the sidewalk, and they don't want you to fall, or your little child to fall in that little hole. So they remind you that there's a space in between. Now, I could say that in teaching on the Holy Spirit, what I'm telling you to do is mind the gap. Because what the Holy Spirit does is fill the gap of everything. Now, first you got to be aware that there usually is a gap. There's a space. We don't recognize that God is as available as the breath in front of our mouth. That God is as available as fire descending from heaven or wind blowing through the room. We always allow God, by our own silliness and stupidity, to be distant, to be elsewhere. We always find a gap between ourselves and our neighbor, between ourselves and really almost everything. And therefore we feel quite lonely and isolated in this world. Without the Holy Spirit, frankly, you're not connected. You're not connected to anything or anybody. You just live an isolated life. Now that desire inside of all of you that wants to keep connecting, relating, communing, that's the Holy Spirit within you. And I'm going to give you another image. I've never used this one before, but for some reason it came to me. Now, I know little about mechanics, but I looked this up on Google today so I wouldn't make a mistake with those of you who work on cars. Because the metaphor that came to me is that God, or the Holy Spirit in particular, is like a spark plug. Now, apparently this is the science of a spark plug. There's two terminals, and there's a gap between them. If there's enough voltage coming into the one terminal from the source, now of course we're going to call the source your inner source, your inner spark plug, the Holy Spirit. You've already got it. The Holy Spirit is dwelling within every one of you in this room equally and always and forever. But until you position the other terminal, the spark doesn't happen. You've got to say and desire, come, Holy Spirit, I need you, I want you. Fill the gap. The gap is always there, largely created by your mind, largely created by your cold heart, if your heart is cold, I hope it isn't. Largely created by your anger and your fear and your judgments and all your resentments. Those just leave the gap real big. But in the science of a spark plug, the source is connected and the voltage just wants somewhere to go. The Holy Spirit just wants somewhere to go. But you have to provide the other terminal. God cannot give unless there is a receiver. And that's you. You were created in this world together with the Holy Spirit to fill the gaps between everything, to mind the gap, to recognize first of all it's there, and you are given the grace and the gift and the power by the indwelling Holy Spirit to overcome the gap. And it will always usually be experienced as a tiny spark, not overwhelming. It doesn't demand your attention. You wonder if even these tongues of fire that descended on the disciples on that first Pentecost, you wonder, I guess they did, but I hope maybe they didn't even notice it. I don't think most of the time we notice the little spark that's saying, you know, you could mind the gap with this receptionist in the checkout line here at Walmart. You could mind the gap with that person who's walking down the street and doesn't look very happy. Just, why don't I trust myself and just give them a little gratuitous, unnecessary smile? That doesn't take much work. But all of those little actions are overcoming the gap that we allow to be there day after day. And brothers and sisters, soon we'll find ourselves at the end of our lives just surrounded by gaps. We haven't connected to anybody or anything. We've never loved a tree or a frog or a sunset or a sunrise. And that would be, I think, the meaning of sin. To slowly cut yourself off from all connection, from all relationship, from all delight, from all wonder, from all awe. And let's be honest, a lot of people do. A lot of faces look very unhappy, very disconnected. Brothers and sisters, you are presumed to be the children of the Holy Spirit. You are presumed to be the people who have allowed the spark, and it is within you. It isn't above you. It isn't beyond you. It's as available as the breath 1 inch in front of your lips. And that's why He gives the Holy Spirit by breathing upon them and saying, here it is. Here it is. Can you breathe in what I've breathed out? And suddenly, as you grow on the journey, you'll see that that breath is the very air. It's everywhere, all the time, and you can't live 1 minute without it. Isn't it amazing that the thing that's most essential, the thing that's most invisible to most people, is the one thing that's everywhere, all the time, and free? The Holy Spirit has been given to you free. This day is called the birthday of the church. The birthday in which we began to trust that we could live in communion, that we could overcome the gaps between races and religions and genders, And you listen to our politics and you say it's impossible, because even the guys who call themselves the leaders don't seem to have overcome the gap. And if they haven't overcome the gap, how can they possibly lead anything or anybody anywhere? So you're going to have to take the job on yourself. You're going to have to take the job of taking little opportunities, little days, little places, with little smiles and little acts of gratuitous love to mend the gap.